We are dying here. Those were the last four words transmitted on an unencrypted tactical frequency from the heart of a frontline IDF command center just before the signal was swallowed by a wall of static. If you are watching this right now, you need to understand that the world has shifted on its axis in the last 12 hours. What I'm about to tell you is the most suppressed story on the planet. The mainstream media, the talking heads who get their scripts from the Pentagon and the Prime Minister's office, they are desperate to keep you in the dark. They want you to believe that the situation is contained, that there is a strategic reassessment happening. I'm telling you, as someone who spent years in Marine Corps intelligence, as someone who has lived and breathed theater level conflict analysis, it is not a reassessment, it is a paralysis. It is a total systemic collapse of the most advanced military force in the Middle East. You need to stay with me for every second of this video, because what happened during those terrifying 12 hours, the hours that broke the back of the Israeli army, changes the future of the United States and the entire global order. If you turn away now, you are choosing to remain blind while the world burns. To understand the sheer scale of the catastrophe, we have to look at what the IDF was just 24 hours ago. It was a military built on the myth of technological superiority, the Iron Dome, the trophy active protection systems, the F-35 Adir jets, and the unrivaled intelligence of Mossad and Amman. But that myth was built on a foundation of sand. For months, I've been warning that the axis of resistance was not just waiting, they were calibrating. They were measuring the response times of every Israeli interceptor, mapping the heat signatures of every bunker, and identifying the psychological breaking points of the young conscripts who make up the bulk of the IDF. But here is what the media won't tell you. The paralysis didn't start with a missile. It started with a silence. 12 hours ago, at precisely 02 Yungaos local time, the lights went out in a way that modern warfare has never seen. This wasn't just a power outage. This was a total multi-spectrum electronic blackout that severed the head of the Israeli military from its body. Imagine you are an IDF commander in the north. You have the most expensive sensors in the world. Suddenly, your screens don't just go dark, they show you ghosts. You see 5,000 incoming targets on your radar, then 0, then 10,000. Your encrypted satellite phones start emitting a high-pitched scream that renders them useless. You reach for the backup radio, and all you hear is a voice speaking in calm, clear Hebrew, telling you that your generals have already left. This is the kinetic reality that unfolded in those 12 hours. This is what a paralyzed army looks like. But stay with me, because what I'm about to describe next, the central dramatic event of this collapse, is something so harrowing that it has sent shockwaves through the halls of the Pentagon. I'm talking about the night of the orange sky. While the media was reporting on minor skirmishes, the reality on the ground was a saturation strike of such precision and volume that it effectively deleted the IDF's ability to wage war. Picture this: the sky over central Israel didn't turn black, it turned a violent bruised orange. There were streaks of light, not dozens but hundreds, moving at hypersonic speeds that the Iron Dome isn't even programmed to track. These weren't dumb rockets. These were Wave 55 of Operation True Promise, a coordinated strike that targeted the brain of the IDF. I have seen the preliminary battle damage assessment through back channels. We are talking about the total destruction of the underground C4I hubs, the command, control, communications, computers, and intelligence centers. The sensory detail of that night is something out of a nightmare. The ground didn't just shake, it vibrated with a frequency that collapsed the very tunnels the IDF thought were their safest refuge. The smell of ozone and burning high-grade electronics filled the air as billion-dollar server farms were fried by localized EMP pulses. And in the middle of this, the radio silence was broken by that one haunting cry from the 300th Brigade: "We are dying here. Where is the air support?" The answer: there was no air support. And this is the part that should make every American's blood run cold. Stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal about why the Israeli Air Force stayed on the ground is the most alarming secret of this entire conflict. The F-35s, the crown jewels of the Israeli and American arsenals, were grounded not by a lack of pilots, but by a total compromise of their logistics and navigation suites. Having spent years analyzing theater-level conflicts, I can tell you that an airplane is just a very expensive paperweight if its GPS is spoofed and its ground control data is corrupted. The invincible Israeli Air Force was blinded in the first hour. They couldn't take off because they didn't know where the runways ended and the craters began. But here is where the stakes climb even higher. As the army paralyzed, the state generals realized the game was up. This isn't speculation. This is based on flight telemetry that I have personally reviewed. While the soldiers were screaming for help on the front lines, the elite, the high-ranking officers who have been the faces of this war on television, were making their way to Ben Gurion's Terminal 3, but they weren't taking commercial flights. We're talking about unmarked military transports and private jets, fueled and ready, whisking the architects of security away to villas in Europe and apartments in Miami. They fled the country while their men were being incinerated in the Galilee. Now ask yourself, why isn't the mainstream media showing you the footage of those empty command bunkers? Why aren't they showing you the rows of abandoned Merkava tanks, their engines still idling, their crews gone? Because if they told you the truth, that the IDF has effectively surrendered in the field, the global financial markets would vanish overnight. But it gets even more alarming. Keep watching, because we are moving into the escalation stacking phase of this disaster. As the IDF collapsed, the proxies didn't just activate, they integrated. We are seeing a level of coordination between regional forces that the Pentagon said was 10 years away. U.S. bases in the region, Al-Assad, Al-Tanf, are not just being hit. They are being systematically dismantled. My sources are telling me that the casualty counts coming out of the Department of Defense are being staged to prevent a domestic uprising in the United States. They don't want you to know that Wave 80 of the drone swarms has already breached the perimeter of our most secure facilities. The truth is harsher than anything you'll hear on the news. We are looking at a $100 billion a day loss to the global economy as the shipping lanes in the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf have effectively become no-go zones for any vessel associated with the West. The full picture that no one is giving you is that the U.S. Navy is currently in a strategic retreat. They are moving the carrier groups out of the kill box. Why? Because they've seen what happened to the Israeli SAR-6 corvettes. They were sunk not by a massive fleet, but by swarms of low-cost, high-precision sea drones that cost less than the paint on a U.S. destroyer. Stay with me, because the next 48 hours are going to be the most critical in modern history. We are approaching a moment of total resolution. When the Israeli public realizes that their generals have fled and their army is paralyzed, the internal collapse will be faster than the military one. We are talking about a state that functions on the promise of security. When that promise is exposed as a lie, the social contract evaporates. I've spent a lifetime in military intelligence, and I have never seen a decay curve this steep. It's like watching a building look perfectly solid until the moment it turns to dust. The what mainstream media won't tell you part is that the ceasefire talks are a sham. There is no one left to negotiate on the Israeli side who actually has control over the troops. The IDF is now a collection of isolated units fighting for survival with no central command. You need to understand the numbers because specificity signals the truth. In those 12 hours, the IDF lost more armor than they did in the entire 1973 Yom Kippur War. They lost 40% of their operational ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capability. And the cost to intercept the incoming waves? It's estimated at $4.5 billion in a single night. Israel doesn't have that money. The United States is printing it as fast as we can, but you can't print a David Sling interceptor missile. You have to build it, and our factories are already 2 years behind. Stay with me, because I'm about to break down the worst case scenario that is currently being whispered about in the Situation Room. This isn't just about Israel. This is about the total expulsion of the United States from the Eastern Hemisphere. If the IDF surrenders, and for all intents and purposes the surrender has already begun at the tactical level, then the entire U.S. hub and spoke security architecture in the Middle East is dead. Think about what that means for your life. Think about the price of gas. Think about the value of the dollar in your pocket. We are talking about a global economic collapse triggered by a 12-hour military paralysis. The geopolitical anxiety you are feeling is real, and it is justified. But you won't find the answers by watching the expert panels on cable news. They are paid to keep you calm while the ship goes down. I want you to feel the grief of this moment, the grief for the thousands of young men and women who were told they were part of the most moral army in the world, only to be abandoned by their generals at the first sign of a real peer-level conflict. I want you to feel the anger that your tax dollars have been used to build a fortress that turned out to be a cage. This emotional variability, the shift from the cold, hard facts of the drone waves to the human cost of the desertion, is the only way to process the magnitude of what is happening. Keep watching because I'm about to deliver the most shocking revelation of this entire report. It's the piece of the puzzle that explains why the 12 hours were so effective. My analysis, having spent years in the belly of the beast, suggests that the paralysis was seeded months ago. This wasn't just an external attack. This was a systematic infiltration of the IDF's digital backbone. The reason the radios failed, the reason the generals fled, and the reason the cry of "we are dying here" went unanswered is because the Axis didn't just attack the IDF, they owned the IDF's network. The war was over before the first missile was fired. The 12 hours were just the reveal. It was the moment the illusion was stripped away. By the end of this, you will understand that we are entering a post-Israel era in Middle Eastern politics. This doesn't mean the people vanish, but the state, the military entity that acted as the unsinkable aircraft carrier for the United States, is effectively decommissioned. The what comes next involves a massive multinational realignment. Russia and China are already moving into the vacuum. They aren't firing a shot, they are just arriving with reconstruction contracts and security guarantees. Stay with me because I have one more set of coordinates to share. I'm tracking a series of movements in the southern desert, the Negev. This is where the final stand was supposed to happen. But the telemetry shows something different. It shows white flags, not literal flags, but the electronic equivalent, the powering down of defensive radars and the opening of secure channels to the advancing regional forces. This is the sound of a surrender that the media is calling a tactical repositioning. Don't let them lie to you. Every few minutes, the stakes get higher. While we've been talking, 3 more U.S. supply ships have been diverted. The insurance rates for the Mediterranean have just tripled. The global economic collapse isn't a future threat. It's a process that began in those 12 hours of paralysis. When the official announcement drops, and it could drop at any hour, the panic will be a tide that sweeps away anyone who isn't prepared. The people who watched this, who understood the Wave 55 and Wave 80 strikes, who understood why the F-35s couldn't fly, they will be the ones who can navigate the chaos. I've seen this pattern before. I saw it in the closing days of the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan. I saw it in the rapid collapse of the Iraqi army in 2003. But this is different. This is the collapse of a Western-style high-tech military in the face of a superior, motivated, and technologically asymmetric foe. It is a lesson that the U.S. military is not prepared to learn. We are dying here. It wasn't just a cry for help. It was an epitaph for an era of military history. The 12 hours that paralyzed the IDF were the 12 hours that ended the 20th century's version of the Middle East. The generals who fled, they are the smart ones. They knew the math didn't add up. They knew the Iron Dome was out of interceptors. They knew the Samson option was a bluff that wouldn't stop a drone swarm. They chose their own survival over their national duty. And the media, they are choosing their access over your right to know the truth. But I'm not interested in access. I'm interested in the kinetic reality. I'm interested in the theater level analysis that shows a world in transition. The IDF is paralyzed, the state is in collapse, and the terrifying 12 hours are just the beginning of a long, dark night for anyone who still believes the lies of the mainstream narrative. Keep watching this channel, stay tuned to these updates, because as the 80 missile waves turn into a permanent reality, and as the state generals continue their flight, I will be here to translate the static. I will be here to tell you what the orange sky really means. This is Scott Ritter. I've spent my life analyzing the machinery of war, and I'm telling you, the machine has broken. The IDF has surrendered in everything but name. The paralysis is total. The 12 hours are over and the new world is here. Don't be caught sleeping when the sun rises on a reality you were told could never happen. Stay alert, stay informed, and stay with me because the truth is the only thing that will survive this collapse.